Okay, wow. It looks like we've got a quorum here. We got a lot of people just showed up. So let's get started on time here. Today we're talking about how to take advantage of the just incredible subcontracting opportunities that are available. Not just in theory, but in all actuality coming up in the next 12 months, and how you and your company can take full advantage of that. So let's get started. This is my credibility slide. I'm supposed to do it, so here it is. But I'm going to give you my real credibility slide later on to show you why I'm believable, hosting this webinar. But this is what's expected of me. So here it is. I've won over $2 billion in federal government contracts. I've won nearly $400 million as a small business owner. My companies have been featured in the Inc. 500 fastest growing company list, the Washington Technology Fast 50 list on multiple occasions. I've snagged some headlines showing that just because you're in the small business world doesn't mean that the opportunities are necessarily small. In fact, that they can get really, really, really big. And perhaps the thing I'm most proud of is my family's nonprofit organization. We were awarded the President Bush Points of Light Award for providing after-school STEM programs to underserved elementary schools. So let's get started talking about the opportunity. I call this the Forgotten Small Business Set-Aside Program, and that is the subcontracting earmark. For these large, massive contracts that companies like Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, IBM, they're winning. Most people don't realize this, but 29.43% of those contracts are going to small business. Nearly a third of those massive contracts are. It's the biggest, best opportunity going for a lot of small businesses. So this isn't just a theoretical, this is an actuality. Over the next 12 months, there's approximately 2,000 requests for proposals for bid opportunities valued between $100 million and $100 billion. And each one of those are going to require a 29.43 subcontracting earmark. Now, it gets even better. Since many of these are multiple awards, there's more opportunities to get a piece of the pie, because many of these they're going to award 5 contracts for that vehicle, or 3, or however many. So that averages out to about 6,000 contracting awards. 6,000. Each one of them going to have a 29.43% subcontracting earmark, and look how massive these opportunities are. 100 million to 100 billion, and approximately a third of each one of those is going to a small business team. So with all this opportunity, there's failure everywhere. Now, why is that? Here's why. Most subcontractors, most small businesses do not know how to pursue this market. It's different. It is. So now I'm going to give you my real credibility slide. I struggled with subcontracting for years until I finally figured it out, and then it became easy. So how did I fail so badly? Well, like I said, when you're looking back on it, you can figure things out, you can see things more clearly. And I made 3 massive mistakes. The very first mistake that I had is I had a really bad look about my company. I did nothing to mitigate the fact that I looked risky. I was pursuing bad markets. I was pursuing subcontracting opportunities in saturated markets where there was too many of my kind. My small business flavor was in abundance. So it made a competition a lot more difficult for me. And then finally, I did not know how to do strategic, massive outreach to get my good news story to as many people as possible. I was horrible. In essence, I was essentially waiting for somebody to knock on the door and give me a gift. And that is no way to run your business. Trust me when I say that. So this right here is basically what I just said. Let's get started. So one of the very first mistakes that most small businesses make is that they think that just because they're a small business, they're going to be able to get on a bid team. They say, well, hey, they have to give 29.43% to a small business, and I are one, so, hey, give me the subcontracts. That doesn't work. I've been a large business development executive before, and there's nothing that those people hate more than this conversation, and we get it all the time. Hi, my name is, Pat, and I own a fill in the blank, woman-owned small business, SDV, OSB, Hub Zone, 8A, doesn't matter, and I'd like to discuss teaming agreements with you. And the business development executive from the big company says, okay, that's great. What value can you add? What, didn't you hear me? The time out here. We're a small business. You got to give us the work. 29.43% has got to be earmarked to us. Time out. We got to give it to a small business, but we're just not going to give it to any small business. And you got to be able to add value. What most people don't realize is that there are over 30 million small businesses in the United States, and over 100,000 are actively seeking federal government opportunities. There's plenty of whatever you are to go around. Now let's take a look at the second largest mistake, and that is that we believe that these large businesses need us. They don't. They don't need our past performances because they have billion-dollar past performances. They don't need our expertise because whatever we can do, they have buildings of people who can do it. They don't need our people because they have, employ up to 100,000 people, plus they have resume databases that exceed 100,000s, very easily. They don't need us at all. In fact, they don't want us. They don't want us at all. And I want to explain to you why that is here in a second. But they are required to use us. It's a match. It's a shotgun marriage is what it really is. So we got to give them what they want in order to pick us over our competitors. Now, what is it that they want? Well, before I can tell you what they want, we got to go back and do a little bit of research first. So, very first thing we got to do is we got to figure out how proposals are being evaluated, because ultimately that's what they're doing. They're inviting you on their bid team to submit a bid. So how's that bid going to be evaluated? Well, in section M of the request for proposal, they will tell you what factors are going to be evaluated. And this right here is the rubric that they're going to use. They're going to use a technical/risk rating to evaluate each one of those factors. Now, if you're red or unacceptable, that means you're non-compliant or you're just way too risky. If you're green, that means you've met all the compliance requirements of the request for proposal and you have acceptable risk. If you're purple or blue, now you're competitive. And how do you become competitive? Well, you have to provide strengths. Now, strengths are things that weren't asked for in the proposal, but that you're adding above and beyond what was asked for, and it has value and merit to the government, and that you have low risk. So the point I'm trying to make here is that your technical/risk rating, which is used for all of your factors and sub-factors, risk is half the score. Nobody thinks about that. Nobody thinks that risk is half the proposal scores. So if you're bidding on a prime contract, you better believe that risk for a small business set-aside is going to be more than half. Trust me when I say that. It's all about risk, especially when you start bidding on larger ones. But that's a different discussion for a different day. Now, IBM, they don't have to worry about this risk rating unless a small business set-aside program is enforced. IBM is one of the most beloved, trusted, respected companies in the world. They have no risk. If they say they're going to do something, they're going to do it. They've got the resources, they've got the capabilities, they've got the history to prove that they're one of the world's best companies. However, when they're forced to bring on this small business team and give nearly a third of the work to companies that nobody's ever heard of, now all of a sudden they have to address not only a little bit of risk, but a lot of risk. About a third of their contract is going to be done by small businesses that nobody's ever heard of and that the government believes are inherently risky. So let's take a look at what we're talking about here. This is another way to look at it. So these are the building blocks to your proposal score. On the technical side, you have your compliance. That'll get you up to green. And then to be competitive in the purples and blues, you have to have strengths. And then the other half of your risk, your technical / risk rating, is risk. Again, risk. So they're not just going to fill those slots in their small business teams with just anybody, because that tiny little compliance piece, is not worth forfeiting half of their risk rating. And in fact, the government has been very, very, very kind in allowing them to say, hey, we couldn't find enough hub zones, we're going to give the hub zone earmark to another type of small business. And that's what they've been getting away with. Now they don't get as high a score because they didn't meet all of it, but they're still meeting the compliance. They're not throwing away their proposal because they're only giving 1% of the work to hub zones instead of the 3%. And so the government is kind of allowing them to do that. Now they're scoring them harder. They're not getting as near as high a score as the other one in this particular section, but they also realize that the prime has got to be able to perform and without risk. Because again, even if you're IBM, the most trusted company in the world, the government is terrified by their bids too. And the reason why is because a third of that contract's being done by companies that they've never heard of. And these are massive contracts, $100 million to $100 billion, and a third of it's being done by really small businesses. If you remember nothing else from this webinar, please remember this slide. It's all about risk, 100% about risk. In fact, the government hates small business risk so much that they're basically redefining what a small business is. Right now, many of the most popular IT-related NAICS codes have small business size thresholds that are well over 30 million. Now, IT is the largest budget item for services in the federal government, and they're making most of those size thresholds over 30 million, well over 30 million. But they also did something else, and that most people didn't quite realize what it really truly meant. They redefined how revenue is calculated. Revenue is now a 5-year running average, where a company could be 5 million 6 years ago in their taxes. The next year they were 10 million, 20 million the year after that, 40 million the year after that in their taxes, and then 75 million in 2022 taxes. Now think about that. 2022 was a long time ago. Hell, we're almost halfway through 2024, and they're using their 2022 completed tax returns, and when you average those together, that's 30 million. So they're using something from a year and a half ago to help justify as a 5-year. So here they're doubling, they're over doubling every single year, with the exception of this last year. But let's just say instead of 150 million, they're 140 million in 2023, but they haven't done their taxes yet. So they grew to 130, in 2023, but here we are, we're halfway through 2024, and we have until October before those 2023 tax returns are due. So how big are we really going to be by the time we can before we actually submit, a tax return that's going to put us over that threshold? Hell, you could very easily be pushing $175 million in size and still be considered a $30 million small business. It's ludicrous is what it is. So, what is it that they need from us as small businesses? Now, I just said it was all about risk. Risk, the technical / risk rating, risk is half their score. They never have to worry about that unless they have a small business utilization plan. So where do you think all their focus is going to go? It's going to go on mitigating that risk in the small business utilization team that they're going to create. Why? It's half their score. You're doing a third of the work, and they want to win it, and they also want to be able to perform. So what do? You give them something that proves you're a mature, low-risk company. It's got to be tangible proof. Hell, they won't even talk to you. You could send them an email and say, hey, Bob, we're a small business. We're really mature. We'd love to join your big team. We're very low risk, da, 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 da. They're not even going to respond to that email. You got to immediately prove that you are low risk. Otherwise, they're not even going to give you the time of day. They're going to go back to that $130 million prime contract and give your woman-owned small business share or your hub zone share or your SDVOSB share to them. Why? Because they're $130 million a year in revenue. They're not small. So as a truly small business, you've got to give them something tangible. ISO certification is the easiest thing that you can obtain that proves that you're a mature, low-risk company. So what does ISO 9001 mean? Well, it's an ISO 9001 Quality Management System certification. That means that you have been audited by an accredited third party and found that your company is using management systems that are fully aligned with the globally accepted industry best practices, which are the ISO standards. That's about a tangible proof point as you can have. It's validated by a third party. So it's not what you're saying. I tell people that if you can't back it up with a proof point, don't say it on your proposal. Save the real estate. Because this is the way source selection boards read it. Blah, 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 blah. No proof points. If there's a proof point provided, then they actually read it. Because, what they have to do it that way. And the reason why is because you could say Sally's company is really, really, really low risk and mature. And then another bidder is going to say Bob's company is even better. They're really, 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 really mature and low risk. It's like, it's all fluff. It's just like how many reallys do you want to put in there? So they need something tangible, something that they can put a tick mark next to, something that they can create a tally, something that they can count. That's what they need. Because at the end of the day, the government's got to support, they got to defend their decision. And if they say, hey, bidder A's team, their subcontracting program, every small business was ISO certified, had at least one corporate credential that demonstrated their corporate maturity, versus, bidder, the second bidder, which only had one company in their small business utilization team that had a corporate credential. Oh, guess who's going to be the lowest risk one? Half the score. So that's the game that you play. Now, I also show here ISO 27001 because that's information security management. That's the hottest professional certification going right now. If you're a services company that does white collar work, 95% of the information that you're going to touch is either classified, controlled unclassified, personal identifiable information, or proprietary to your partner's proprietary information. And information security management validates your ability to securely manage that information. You're going to keep them off the Washington Post front page. That's what that really means. Talking about risk, that's your risk mitigator right there. So I've been talking about just theoretically, hey, ISO can help you, corporate credentials can help you. Let me show you actually how much it can help you. Now, this is last year's data. I haven't updated it this year, but it hasn't changed hardly any, if at all. There are over 100,000 small businesses. And when I say small businesses, I'm talking about businesses that can get to stupid size. Over 100,000. That's tough to compete with if you're just a generic small business. But if there's any way that you can claim that you're a service-disabled veteran-owned small business, a woman-owned small business, an 8A or a hub zone, you got to do that because these are the really small businesses. These are the companies that weren't put together by venture capital groups and have a ton of money thrown at them where they're growing or they're acquiring other companies real quickly, to be at that $130 million size threshold that's still somehow or another counted as a small business. You don't want to be in that group. But if you are, you need to get some ISO certifications, there too, because less than 0.1% of those companies have 2 or more ISO certifications. But let's look at these other categories. Service disabled veteran-owned small business. If you're a veteran, you can be a service disabled veteran-owned small business. Why? This is an unknown fact that most people don't know. You know what disability rating you need in order to become a service disabled veteran-owned small business? 0. A 0% disability will enable you to become a service disabled veteran-owned small business. You just got to go through the process and get a letter that says that you're 0% disabled. It's the disability letter that basically says you went through the process and they're giving you a rating. That's it. So 0%. Hub zone. Hub zone has nothing to do with your demographics. It does, you don't have to be a veteran, you don't have to be disabled, you don't have to be a woman, you don't even have to be, 8A, which is predominantly minorities from disenfranchised minority, demographics. A hub zone requires 2 things. One is you have to have an office in a designated hub zone area. I have yet to meet a person that wasn't within a 30 minutes drive from a hub zone area. And an office is anything with a door. It could be a broom closet, as long as it has a door and a key. A door and a key, that's all you need. It could be your brother's spare bedroom. It could be, it could be anything. And then the other requirement is that 35% of your workforce has got to be a resident of a hub zone area. So, believe it or not, most college towns are in hub zone areas. So you find a college student, you pay them 40 hours a a week at minimum wage, and that constitutes an employee and the hub zone application. And you only need 3 payroll cycles for that. So in order to be able to submit your application, become a hub zone. So it's very, very, very doable. So you can go from competing against 100,000 plus up to, just gargantuan size small businesses, and you can reduce your competitive field, if you're clever, down to about 16. 16. You could do that. These corporate credentials, they really set you apart. Same way with SDVOSB. You could go from competing against almost 19,000 SDVOSB competitors for those subcontracts to 30 that have 2 ISO certifications. That's how you do that. And look at the subcontracting earmark. This is a ridiculously conservative number. That's over $10 billion. $10 billion in subcontracting opportunities. And if you're an SDVOSB with 2 ISO certification, you're one of the 30 most credentialed, lowest risk SDVOSBs trying to get on these teams to eat up that $10 billion. 30 for $10 billion. Women-owned small businesses, hey, there's 51 that have 2 ISO certification, but they get a larger earmark, so it's 17 billion, that they're chasing in subcontracts. I'm telling you, this is the category that you want to be in, pursuing this size of earmarks. So, let's move on to bad markets. What's a bad market? Well, let's call this guy Bob. He's in the Coast Guard supporting DHS. And he launches an IT company as soon as he gets out of the Coast Guard, just like 99% of his entrepreneurial peers do. What Bob has done is he's connected some easy dots that led him down the wrong path. He says, "Hey, this is what I know. I'm good at it. I'll do it when I get on the outside by launching a company and selling it to the federal government." Well, that's what everybody's doing. Everybody's saying, like, "Hey, whatever I did in uniform, I'm going to do as soon as I get out." And what he's doing is he's fishing off the pier like everybody else with a ton of competition. Don't do that. Don't do that. So what's the answer to this right here? Well, let's take a look at it. Remember this slide? And again, look at these numbers. These are little numbers. And look at this right here. 6,000 opportunities. Those 6,000 opportunities, a lot more opportunities than there are low-risk, mature small businesses. But yet, small businesses, they cluster in certain areas, and then they leave other areas completely uncovered. If you could see a heat map of what's happening, some of it would be just blazing hot red, and these people are wondering why they can't get any work, because there's 25 of them for every one opportunity, and then they're leaving large swaths of federal government opportunities completely unpursued. That is exactly what's happening. Look at this right here. This right here is the small business scorecard results for each of the agencies for subcontracting set-asides. If it's gold, it's because they missed their set-aside mark. Look at all that opportunity. Opportunities everywhere. Now, a lot of people will say, well, let's get back to Bob here. Bob is, why would Bob, as a service-disabled veteran, why would he want to pursue work in DHS when, there's more than enough of them, when he could be working in HHS? It just doesn't make sense. Now, I get this question a lot too. They say, well, why didn't he just stay in DOD? Randy, you just showed this information that just proved that you're wrong. And that, like people who are getting out, these service-disabled veterans, for example, are getting out of the military, they can't find enough of them either in the Department of Defense. That's true, and it's also false. The people who are getting out of the military, who are launching service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses, are launching them in areas and in skill sets and in services that they performed while they were in uniform. They were at the pointy end of the spear. And for every pointy end of the spear opportunity there is in the Department of Defense, there's nine in service and support areas. So these people who are leaving the military and trying to do exactly what they did while they were in uniform, again, think about the heat map. There's a ton of them competing for those because that's what they're comfortable doing, and they're leaving all of those services, all of those support requirements, unpursued. So it depends on where you are in the DoD. So this isn't just a vertical market. A vertical market, well, I got the map sideways here, but vertical markets are traditionally your customers. Horizontal markets are traditionally your service offerings. And what you've got to do is you've got to use both of those to identify areas where there's inadequate numbers of your set-aside type. And if you do that, you're going to make a ton of money because you're competing against a very, very, very weak or non-existent field for these opportunities. That is the game. So once you prove that you're low risk by getting corporate credentials, then what you need to do is you need to look at the small business scorecard and also budget documents to see where this money is going and under what NAICS codes, and pick the NAICS codes that favor you the most. Hey, they can't find enough STVOSBs or hub zones or women-owned small businesses or 8As in these hub zones in this organization. Now, that intersection is called an account. An account is nothing more than the strategy to sell a specific service offering to a specific customer. And those accounts, that cross-section, if you find those, it doesn't take that much. Look at this. There's gold everywhere. And even where there's not gold, there's still opportunities because they may be, they're paying Peter they're robbing from Peter to pay Paul. That means that they're overfilling these with SDVOSBs and because they can't find enough in another area. So you've really got to do that detailed research. But they're everywhere, these opportunities. So now that you're something special, you're providing an in-demand service for an in-demand, agency, and you have proven that you're low risk through these corporate credentials, you got to let God and country know. Prince Charming is not going to come knocking on your door and give you the last subcontract. He doesn't even know about you. Your website, He's not going to search for that. He's not going to find you. So what you have to do is you got to think that your company is on fire, because it is. Your company is either growing or it's going out of business. That is a fact. Now, it could be slowly dying and going out of business, but if you're not growing, you're dying. You're going out of business. So you got to put that fire out. And if you had to put a fire out, which hose are you going to grab? Because that water, that hose, represents outreach, business development, partner engagement, customer engagement. Man, you want the high volume hose. It's all about numbers in this industry. It really is. The federal government is the industry of big numbers. You got to put big numbers into the game in order to win. The good news is it's never been easier. Never been easier. There's LinkedIn automation tools. There's mass emailing tools out there where it's just as easy to send 10,000 emails as it is 10. You just set it up, set the email, set the email template up. It auto-populates it. Boom, you're sending it out. It's happening in the background, and it's going to 10,000 executives that can actually make your life better. So let's put it all together. So let's just say you're Bob, and instead of doing IT work that pertains to navigational systems that are on his Coast Guard cutter ships, let's just say he says, you know what, there's not that much work in reality out there, for contractors to do, and everybody who's doing it with me in uniform is probably going to want to do that same thing. Let's expand into a slightly different NAIC, still IT, but instead of tracking, ocean depth, maybe we're tracking medical records. So let's kind of focus on medical records, and let's target HHS because they can't find enough SDVOSBs out there. So instead of competing in a space where they're crushing their goal for SDVOSBs, which is DHS, let's move down to HHS. And let's focus on that market space. So what do? You go out and you start researching, hey, who are the big companies that are crushing it, that are likely going to be bidding on these massive contracting opportunities between 100 million and 100 billion every single year, and let's start targeting those companies. So what you do is you find lists like this right here. This is like the top 15 companies on this particular GSA contract, and that'll be your first wave, for example. So you go to like LinkedIn Sales Navigator, and you say, okay, I want to look at companies, these companies right here, and people who are with the job title of business development specialist, director of business development executive, business development manager, and so on and so forth. Proposal manager, capture manager, account executive, vice president of accounts, whatever those are. So just using these 3 or 4, I've already found 1,500 business development executives from these companies right here that can make your life better. So what do? Well, you take this information, you take that list right here, and you can do one or two things. There's a tool that you can use called Wiza, W-I-Z-A, that will give you the email address for each one of these, whether you're connected to them or not. This tool will do that for you. So now all of a sudden you have 1,500 emails to just the most targeted, optimal lead list you could ever possibly create. They're business development executives from companies who are crushing it in an area where you want to do subcontracting. It couldn't be any better than that. So you can either get their email address, their email address using Wiza, or you can stay within LinkedIn and you can use a LinkedIn automation tool. Meet Alfred is one. I'm not so sure I would continue to recommend them, but there's lots of others out there. And then what you can do is you can set up a LinkedIn messaging campaign where it will send out hundreds, if not thousands, of these messages within LinkedIn to these people. And it's all about the message. It really is. It's like, hi, Bob. I'm the CEO of an ISO 9001, ISO 27001 certified hub zone, and we're pursuing a large set-aside opportunity and believe Booz Allen or Deloitte would be an ideal strategic partner. I'd love to meet to share capabilities briefs. Please let me know your availability. Thanks, Randy. Well, there's a lot of thought that went into this message. The very first thing that we did is we personalized it, so he doesn't think that we're just sending this thing out canned. Everybody doesn't say hi. It actually uses his name. Next thing it shows is that you're the decision maker. You're the CEO. You're the owner. You can make a decision. Next thing is what's going to knock his socks off. It shows that you're not only a hub zone, which is incredibly hard to find, but you're one with 2 corporate credentials. Now, he's not going to know that there's only 16 others like you. He's just going to know that he's never seen one. He's never seen a hub zone with 2 ISO, certifications. And, so he's thinking like, wow, where have you been? We've been taking a hit because we can't find hub zones that can prove that they're low risk. Now, we go one step further. Instead of asking for a handout and saying like, hey, can you give me a subcontract, which every business development executive hates, what you're doing is saying like, hey, business development executive, I know that you get a bonus based upon the amount of revenue that you bring in every single year, either through prime contracts or subcontracts, and I'm bidding on something really large where I believe that you'd be a great strategic partner where you can get a cut of that revenue. I'm actually talking about giving you money rather than, you giving me a handout. And then you do it with a little bit of humble pie. I'd love to meet, share your capabilities, briefs. I'm available at your convenience, those type of things. You got to be likable. So I tell the people I work with, to expect a 1.5% hit rate. Why 1.5%? Because I didn't want them to think that this would be to have unrealistic, expectations of it. And I've had a couple people come to me, that I work with, and they say, Randy, it's just not working for me. And I say, well, why not? Like I said, hey, I got my ISO certifications. I started reaching out to people, and nothing's happening. And I said, well, how many people have you reached out to? Probably at least 15. And I look at this person, and I said, this is a volume game. So you think that you're supposed to get work, revenue, money for every 15th person that you talk to, who's able to give you money. Now think about that. I've done this. If you count up all the big businesses in the federal government contracting industry, and you count up all the business development positions, people who are in business development positions in those companies, there's 40,000 people. So you think that every 15th one of those, you're going to get money just because you talk to them. Every 15th. And, and they say, well, no, I guess not, because hell, you could become a trillionaire, doing that before you're even a third of the way through talking to all the business development executives that I can get you in a matter of, a few hours. And I said, you need to come back and talk to me when you reach 15,000. Because, that 1.5% hit rate that I told you about, it doesn't mean anything if you're only reaching out to 10 people or 15 people or even 100 people. But what if you reach out to 10,000 people? Now you've got 150 people that can make your life better by either inviting you on their bid team or be willing to join your bid team when you're bidding on something. But they may not have something immediately available. So I say that, this 150 people, they will make your life better at some point during the next 2 years. It could be immediately, but it could be, during the next 2 years. You just got to keep them warm. Now, people say like, well, gee whiz, Randy, that's like, I don't have enough time. I'm a small business. It's not like I got a whole team of people doing this. If you can write one email, you can write 10,000 emails. If you can write one message, you can write 10,000. It's just using automation. You can say, hey, Bob, it'll fill in the blank. You can say, hey, Bob, not sure if you caught the latest HHS Industry Day. If not, here's a link to the PowerPoint presentation that they presented. Hope you find it helpful. Thanks, Randy. Okay, I sent out that one message to Bob, but I could have sent it out to 10,000 other people, and they would have audited Sally. Not sure if you made the HHS, you could do that. It's automation. If you can do it for one, you can do it for 10,000. It's just that easy nowadays because it's truly a numbers game. You just got to put the numbers into it. Now, here's the reality. I said 1.5%. It's closer to over 8% in reality. The people who are doing this, that I'm working with in government contracting academy, they're getting teaming agreements every 3 to 4 weeks by doing this. Think about that. They're getting a teaming agreement every 3 to 4 weeks. Every teaming agreement is not only an opportunity to win a contract with your team, but more importantly, it's a relationship that you're developing with those partners. Win or lose, you got the relationship. And here's the good news. These larger companies, they only bid on things where they have a high probability of success. And the reason why is because they have real bid and proposal budgets. A small business, as a small business, my bid and proposal budget was, how many boxes of pizza I was willing to buy at 10:30 p.m. at night, for the people who's there, working late writing proposals. But for them it's a real budget, and they keep track of it closely, and they're only going to use and leverage that budget, commit that budget to things where they have a high probability of success. So the people who are doing it are being very successful in this strategy. So in summary, ISO credentials are a must. It's the easiest ones to get, even if you're a small business. I'm asked this question all the time. Hey, I'm only a one-person company. Can I get it? Absolutely. And it's actually easier for you to get it than anybody else. The smaller you are, the easier it is to obtain it. There is no requirement for revenue, for number of customers, or anything like that. You just got to be operating with ISO compliant processes and procedures, and be audited and found that you're doing it. So when you're small, it's the easiest one in the world to get. Now the question is how hard is it to become ISO certified? I need an hour of your time in order to get the information that I need so I can get my team creating these documents that are fully customized to your company and our industry. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you access to our self-paced ISO training that's going to show you how to use your ISO program, not ISO in general. I'm talking about your program. These are your processes, these are your procedures, this is how you maintain them, this is how you use them. And then while you're going through that training, I'm going one step further. I'm giving you the processes and procedures, I'm teaching you how to use them, and I'm now going to show you what a finished product looks like. It's called a record. For example, I've been in your shoes. I know that every single small business owner out there has a cash flow risk. So I put a cash flow risk in your risk register. Hey, there's one record. Because your process says that you're supposed to evaluate that risk, I use your risk assessment form. So there's two records. So your process says that for all severe risks that you have to have a risk management plan. So I create a risk management plan that basically says, hey, start researching additional sources of financing. So there's 100% authentic records, and you get to see what the finished product looks like. Now, 99.999% of my clients at that point, they say, oh my gosh, I will never be more ready for an ISO audit than now. Randy has just given me a perfectly clean ISO program that I haven't had a chance to screw up yet. I've just gone through this training, so it's all fresh in my mind. And most importantly, and this is the most important thing about an audit, is I've had people who've got over a decade of experience in ISO creating authentic records for me. And all I got to do is sign them, and they become real records. That becomes my real, risk register, my real risk assessment form, and my real risk management plan. So that's what 99.9999% of my clients do that. So they'll sign those, and then what we do, again, because I'm trying to keep this, keep your costs down, ISO is a global organization. You don't have to go down the street in Washington, D.C. and get an auditing firm like Deloitte You just have to pick a fully ISO accredited auditing firm anywhere in the world. So I use one that's outside the United States because it's a hell of a lot cheaper. And because you're a services company, they're allowed to do a remote audit. They can't watch you and observe you do your services on customer site. That's not allowed. So they're allowed to do a remote one. But US based auditing firms, 99% of them will never tell you that because they want to be on your company site so they can upsell you and charge you more money. They're going to charge you, they're going to charge you per diem, they're going to charge you travel, they're going to ask for something and you're not going to have it, so they're going to say, oh, well, that's just extended us another day, and then they're going to charge you, another day. So if it's done in person, it's going to take at least 3 to 4 days per ISO certification, at least. So if you're getting 2, it's going to take 6 to 8 days on a US based one. So that's why I use overseas auditing firms. They're just as credentialed as the United States. It's a global organization, and so that's why I do that. Plus, they don't upsell you. Total commitment on your side, 12 hours, and that's if you do your 6 hours of training before we submit your paperwork. Now, there is one thing that you have to do, and it's not part of the audit, but this enables the auditor to do the audit. The auditor, an ISO auditor, he can be working with a home nursing company and auditing them 1 week. Next week, he could be doing a plumbing company. The week after that, could be an architectural firm. Next one, it could be a medical device manufacturer, so on and so forth. So, and he's fully accredited and qualified to do each one of those audits. But ISO, the organization says, in order to do a really, proper audit, you need to have context. You need to know a little bit about the company and need to know a little bit about the industry. So he's required to do what's called a stage 1 interview with leadership, so he can learn about your company and learn about your industry. It's not part of the audit. But it enables him to be permitted to do the audit. So what we do, since I am your internal auditor through this process, you and I meet with the auditor, and he asks you about your company. He asks you about your industry. There's no wrong answers or anything like that. He just has to do that. Basically what he's doing is he's getting screenshots to show that he did it. So he is now allowed to do the audit, which takes place, again, in his office overseas. All this can take place well within a month. So that is how easy and fast we can do it. Now everybody wants to know, hey, how much does this thing cost? Right now, you are operating the canned tuna of small businesses. What do I mean by that? You go to a grocery store, the cheapest meal that you can walk out with is a can of tuna. It'll cost anywhere between $1.19 and $2.15. You don't realize that now because you're in the heat of battle. You got expenses coming and you got cash flow concerns, all this kind of stuff. But this is what you're not doing. You're not paying $1.5 million in royalties for a franchise. You're not paying massive amounts for manufacturing infrastructure. You're not paying massive amounts for research and development and software development. You're not paying massive amounts for scale. When you write a proposal, that could be life-changing. Life-changing. You're writing a proposal that if you win, you're going to become a multi-millionaire. And you know what it's going to cost you? It's going to cost you the cost of the binders that you got to put them in, the paper. For $100, you get to bid on something that can make you a multi-millionaire. Now, you don't have to hire those people beforehand. You hire them after you win. So it is the cheapest. And that's I'm commending you for making this decision. I'm not knocking it all. Hell no, you're one of the smartest entrepreneurs out there for doing this. You're just smarter than the rest. You have entered a market space with the lowest cost of market entry. Now, a few months ago, my wife sent me to the grocery store to get a can of tuna, and this is how ignorant I am. I didn't realize that there was different qualities of tuna. I thought it was a can of tuna, was a can of tuna, was a can of tuna. So I saw that one went for $1.19, and then they had some going for as high as $2.15. Something like, why am I going to spend $2.15 when I can buy this $1.19 can? Hell, tuna's tuna. So I saving 96 cents on a ridiculously cheap product to begin with. I thought my wife was going to be so proud of me, and she wasn't. I got home, I opened up that can of tuna, and I'm convinced that a cat would have turned its back to it. That's how nasty it was. It was not the canned tuna that I was used to seeing, like, that's on the right. So I realized that 96 cents is the absolute best 96 cents that you can spend in a grocery store. Is upgrading from chunk-like tuna to solid white albacore. And you're in the same situation as a small business owner in the federal government contracting industry. Your costs to launch that company is about so big. Investing a little bit more to have wild success is the best return on investment that you can make. It is the equivalent to that 96 cents in the canned tuna grocery aisle. So now the question is what are we talking about? Now, if you were to go out right now and price, what would it cost you to get ISO 27001 Information Security Management certified? You're going to find that the total average cost is about $55,000. In 2013, when I got my ISO 9001 certification, it cost me $25,000. $25,000. That was over a decade ago. That's how much it cost. What I'm able to do is I'm able to provide you 2 ISO certifications for $23,998, and also give you my year-long advanced government training program that's designed to take a person who's thinking about being a small business owner in the federal government contracting industry all the way through to having success. So since I've already talked about the ISO certifications, the program itself has 25 courses. It's self-paced. It's online. Catch it whenever you want. A lot of people use it as a resource, and what I mean by that is, here on this slide right here, let's say they just got on a bid team and they're being invited to a pink team review. So what they'll do before they go to that pink team review, they'll watch that pink team proposal review lesson, so they'll know what to do there. Same way with the green team or red team or gold team or white team, or let's just say that they were asked to write, a section of the proposal, and they'll go to that section and they'll see how to do it. They will, like, maybe they're responsible, since they're ISO 9001, to write the quality control plan, and so they'll see what that looks like. And what they'll also do is they'll be able to download an example one. The other thing that I do is I provide literally thousands of downloads. My goal is to never have you start with a blank sheet of paper. You need a marketing brochure, you got templates and you got example ones. You need a capabilities brief, you got examples. You need a template for your request for proposal shred, you got one. You need a kickoff brief for a for a blue team, you got one. Whatever you need, you get. And so I've never had anybody who's finished this program who didn't say, "Wow, Randy, just that one lesson itself paid for this program several times over." And it's like I said, it's the fastest growing program in the federal government contracting industry. I did over $1 million in revenue last year alone on this program. So it's wildly successful, it's wildly popular, and it's wildly effective in helping people launch small businesses in the federal government contracting space. So in essence, this is what we're going to do. We're going to help you get those corporate credentials. We can help you, get maybe Hub Zone if you're interested in getting that. But we're going to make you as highly competitive company as possible, especially with those 2 corporate credentials, ISO 9001 and usually it's ISO 27001 is what people want, but 20,000 TAC 1 IT services, that's another popular one. If you're doing things that are that pertains to the environment, it's ISO 14001, which is environmental management system. If you're doing more construction related stuff, you can get ISO 45001, occupational health and safety. So there's all kinds of different corporate credentials that you can get that we can help you. Once you become a sexy company, well, you got to have a storefront. So we help you design your website or your LinkedIn page. However, I recommend both. And I have a guy, and I'll give you his number. He's cheap as can be, and he does a really good job doing proposals. Not proposals, but doing websites. So once you have a great storefront, then we do the massive outreach, and I'll help you set that up. Where you're not reaching out to tens, hundreds, or even thousands. You're reaching out to tens of thousands of people, telling them your good news story. And then, wherever you prosper, first, dig deep in that industry. My very first success came in the logistics industry, and even though I could barely spell logistics, I learned a lot about the logistics industry, and we had a lot of success there. If you'd like to carry on the conversation, please email me at Randall at ISO Certification Group, Randall.Wimmer at Government Contracting Academy, Coach at Government Contracting Academy. Here's my Calendly link. It's Randy-Wimmer. And then, if you want to learn more about this program, it's gcacampus.com. Also wrote a book a few months ago that kind of explains my process of how to launch a federal government contracting company. And it very closely aligns with, I would say, maybe the first 25% of the program that I offer here. So I hope to hear from you.